Hey, what's going on, guys? Carter here with Edge Mindset. I've got another kind of yappy video. We're going to explore some ideas. I want to talk and ramble. So, like I always say with these videos, disclaimer up front. I've got a loose idea of what I want to talk about. Really, it's just me going through some things that have been rattling around in my head. I don't necessarily have any sort of objective with this video. I'm not really trying to change anyone's mind or do anything like that. It's just some ideas that have been rambling around in my head. And this is another opportunity for me to say, I told you so. I told you so, right? Recently, I did a video talking about the Microtech ZBP. I get a lot of flack because in the video I said ZBT because that's what it was originally called, zero blade tolerance. When I bought my Ultratech ZBT, that's what it was called, and in that video, that's what I referred to it as. They've since changed it to ZBP, Zero Blade Play, which makes more sense, like the word-wise, but ZBP doesn't roll off the tongue as well as ZBT. ZBT, it sounds better, it's easier to say than ZBP. ZBP. Anyways, just wanted to clear that up. So I did a video on that talking about how I predicted the potential for the ZBP series of knives to go away, citing mainly just the maintenance and the returns and things like that. In a production knife, it's just not working out. And it turns out that maybe some truth to that. I don't know. It's still kind of questionable, but they are rolling back the ZBP, or at least offering a new Ultratech without it. So similar to that, there was another prediction that I made months and months ago about the knife market kind of going downhill and getting soft and things not being worth as much money and things like that. Now, the only reason I am calling it out here is because I got so much pushback on that video. I got a lot of people saying I was nuts. That's not true. It's not happening. The knife market is as strong as ever. And in particular, I had people point out kind of Striders and how Striders were like immune to it or something like that. Something along those lines where, I had multiple people kind of say, well, that's why I'm sticking to the Striders because, the knife market's so solid and blah, blah, blah. Well, lo and behold, Striders are not immune. No knife company is immune. Everything is softened. The secondary market is not great for sellers. And sales are down across knife sellers. Now, I don't have access to their actual financials. Some of this is me assuming and supposing based on what I'm seeing. But it's pretty clear that sales are down, right? People don't have the excess money that they used to have. More people are affected by job loss and things like that. Inflation continues to go up, and people are apprehensive about spending money on novelty items like collecting knives, right? So it affects the knife market. So I was right. Now, it's one of those things where I wish I wasn't right. I'm not happy that I was right. By the way, I'm going to go through all these knives and say what they are in case you don't know. We'll talk about them kind of towards the end. I'll kind of run through them. I think most people watching this video probably know what most or all of these knives are, but we'll talk about them nonetheless. So there's that. That's the main thing I wanted to get off in the front. That's not really what I want to talk about here. I kind of want to revisit the concept of the knife market being down. What that means potentially. I'm going to use the word potentially and allegedly a lot because I don't want people thinking I'm like some Merlin the Wizard. I don't know why I said Merlin the Wizard. Why I'm like some Nostradamus who can predict the future. I can't. I am just, I've been around for a while. As my father-in-law would say, I have a lot of candles on my birthday cake. And I've been in the knife community for a long time. I've seen it kind of come up. I've seen it come down. And to be honest with you, like the knife market, as much as we think it's this unique, cherishable little slice of ourselves, really behaves like any other market similar to this, any other hobby or commodity. They all get affected essentially the same for the most part. So yeah, I want to talk about some things that are probably going to be happening and are currently happening. So the obvious one is, just secondary prices are going down, right? Knives that used to be worth a lot of money are starting to be worth less money, and it's affecting every single brand, every single make. Now, some of the super hot new makers are still going pretty strong, right? Like they're still selling out when they drop, you know, Utzler and Oz Machine Company and Roosevelt, right? They're all selling really good. And some of those secondary markets are actually still surprisingly very, very strong. For example, Oz Machine Company, Roosevelt's. I am very surprised at how strong the secondary market is on those still. Actually blows my mind. Even aside from the whole general downturn of the market, I thought it would have softened by now. They've been out for a long time. They're all, you know, like a lot of people give me crap for Striders being essentially the same knife, but Roosevelt's, man, those are even more so the same knife. I've seen people with like 10 Oz Roosevelt's, and they're very much the same knife. Like almost all of them have the same blade finish. They all have the same blade shape. There's only one blade shape. And they might have a little different milling pattern, maybe anodized pocket clips and things like that, but very much the same knife. So I'm very surprised at how well that market is going strong. But even other knives like Utzler, you're seeing the drops. Instead of selling out in 2 minutes, they're selling out in 10 minutes. Striders, we're starting to see Strider drops where the knives are hanging out for 20, 30 minutes sometimes. If it's not a super interesting configuration, they're kind of hanging out there. Now, they've also increased their production, so it is hard to tell exactly how much is what. But it used to be, there was a time when I was into new Striders, and I didn't even bother with the drops because it was just impossible for me to get one. And I'm like, I just don't even want to undergo the mental torment of trying. Sorry, there was just some crazy grease on there. I didn't even want to go through the mental torment of trying for the drop because I couldn't even get close. Now, I can actually score. I scored that, actually haven't shown it officially on a long form video, but I scored that CC SNG, the Stonewash, all Stonewash version. Nailed one of those in a drop. And I don't do well on Strider drops. I assume because of where my location is and where their servers are, I'm just always so far behind that I can never get it. So you're seeing things stick around on drops. You're seeing the secondary market deals popping up. Now that's a little bit of a double-edged sword because, you know, it's not a heyday for buying necessarily because a lot of people just aren't selling. Right? If they can't make what they think they should get on a knife to sell, then they're not going to sell it. And if they can't find something that they want, they're less motivated to sell. So you are seeing kind of people hold on to stuff more than they used to. But when they do sell, they really have to kind of hit it hard and lower that price if they're motivated to sell because stuff just is not, it's just not really moving. The other thing I think you're going to see here soon is we had a little bit of an explosion of some overseas, you know, like some Chinese-made, U.S.-designed knives. The reason I'm showing this one from Crescent Edges is because this is a knife that we may never see again in the history of the knife world, right? This is a flat-out bonkers, bizarre, crazy knife. Like who would ever make something like this? This thing's wild. I love it, but it's absolutely wild. Carbon fiber inlays, crazy blade shape. It's sharpened up on the front, sharpened all here, but it's premium materials. I believe we're rocking M390 or, you know, similar high-end steel. DLC coated blade. This is manufactured by Riot, which is a high-end Chinese manufacturer. Amazing carbon fiber inlays, all titanium handle. Premium materials in a crazy knife. We may never see something like this again. The cost of doing business overseas with knife making from China in particular is getting more and more expensive. I believe their cost to manufacture is getting more expensive. We're seeing the prices go through the roof. I'm seeing like WE knives sell for $500 now. Now, granted, super premium, large collaboration knife, right? So it's as expensive as they can be, but still $500 for a Chinese-made knife. Haven't seen that before, at least not in a full production company. You know, there's always been some kind of like this guy here. This is the Forever Steel Dracula. Integral button lock. This one isn't even $500, but you know, a little wilder, a little more bespoke. But mainstream WE knives are getting up to like $500 now, which is pretty wild. We've also got, importation duties that may or may not be happening or will be happening, or I don't know. But that's affecting things too. Long story short, something like this was only possible because of how inexpensive it was to make this, which meant that makers could take really crazy risks on things like this. I'm thinking in the future you're going to see less and less of wild designs being made overseas in favor of kind of knives that are more palatable. Let's see, what do we got here? I don't have very many palatable knives. We're going to pull out this Armadillo from Poikilo. Not the best example, but something a little safer. You're going to continue to see made overseas with premium materials and things like that. But the wild stuff is going to go away. We're also going to see less and less companies. By the way, here's another Crescent Edges knife, not as crazy as this guy, the Spade. This is the Eternal, I think, is what this is called. Pretty cool. Looks kind of like a Spartan Roman, whatever it is. Anyways, you're just going to see less and less small makers pop up, right? For a time there, over the last 4 or 5 years-ish, everybody was a knife maker or a knife designer, right? Everybody was getting something made overseas. You'd see all these knives kind of pop up and go on pre-orders and things like that. You're going to see less and less of that because it's getting more expensive to do. And the economy, same thing mentioned before, people have less money to invest in a crazy knife idea, right? A lot of these Chinese knife makers too are getting more established, and so their criteria, their minimums, their minimum spend, minimum units are going up, right? They're not begging for business like they used to be. And so the barrier for entry to even have your design made overseas, it's getting higher and higher. And so you're going to see less and less kind of YouTubers making knives and like Instagram people making knives. At least that's my prediction, right? I mean, these are all, I think it goes without saying, these are all kind of my hypothesis of what we're going to see over the next, 2 to 5 years-ish or something like that. Now, that not all doom and gloom. Not all doom and gloom. What that means is pick up things like this. If you are at all interested, pick these kind of things up now, because you may not see them for a long time, if ever at all. Now, once again, obviously, if you don't like this, then you don't like this and you don't want anything to do with it. Also, pick up those grails that you have been eyeing for years that you couldn't afford or didn't want to afford. Once again, assuming you have the means to do it, you're going to see things kind of go back to a reasonable price. Now, the way I look at what's happening now, I know a lot of the younger people see this as like knife apocalypse. I've heard that a lot, right? Where, holy crap, we're going into the basement, nothing is worth anything, blah, blah, blah. I don't see it that way. I see it more like we were in a crazy economic knife bubble for a number of years where knives were going for, at retail, more than retail on the secondary market. That's not normal. Historically, that's not normal at all. Like, generally, the most you would ever pay for a knife is when you buy it brand new, and then you would only sell it for less money. That's historically how this stuff works, and I think we're just kind of going back to that. We're seeing the prices of these knives kind of settle down, and that's good because that means you're going to see less flippers. You're going to see less people bogarting the lines at blade shows to try and get up front so that they can just score pieces to resell, and it's going to be compounding too. So prices are going to be dropping just because of, money availability and interest and things like that. But also there's going to be less of that secondary kind of reseller type market that we used to have. For example, let's go back to Striders here. When Striders were super hot and you could basically sell just about, literally any Strider you could sell above retail. What that meant is people would go to these drops and they would essentially not even care what was dropping. They didn't have to have an interest in that knife because they knew they could just buy the thing and resell it and make $100, $200, $300, $400, right? And so it meant they could go in blind. They didn't need to think about it. And, the people doing it for a profit were going to do that anyways. But even somebody like me, that was my kind of mentality. I never bought anything with the intention of like reselling it and making money, but it just lifted the burden of me having to really think about, man, do I really want to buy this Strider? I don't really have the money. I shouldn't do it. Didn't matter, because I'm like, cool, I'll just buy it and I'll make the decision later. Worst case scenario, I make $100 and sell it or get my money back, right? But that's going away now, because like Striders are going for less than retail. And so that means there's less people interested in buying them up at drops, and it means they're hanging around longer. So now is a good time, if you've avoided certain brands because of inflated secondary prices and really big difficulty in being able to score them in drops, maybe now is the time to kind of revisit that. Now, I don't mean right now, like this weekend. Just like I said, over the coming couple of years, you're going to see these changes kind of continue to progress and progress and progress. I'm hoping we get to a day where you can actually collect some of these knives you've always wanted without it being an insane financial investment. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about all of this wildness I've been rambling on? Some of you might be saying, wow, you're just kind of stating the obvious at this point. True, at this point, but I made these predictions months and months and months ago, and I had lots of people tell me I was crazy and that it's not true and it's not affecting the knife market, and I had people telling me that the economy's better than ever, people are making more money, not an issue, none of this is going on. But clearly, things are changing and there's not as much disposable income around, and people's priorities are shifting, as they should, whenever this kind of stuff happens, right? Like, these are the things you give up. Collecting knives, right? Buying hobby stuff. This is what you really start to skimp on so that you can shore up and focus on the things that matter. Of course, that doesn't count for people absolutely crazy like me, who's a psychopath and continues to make poor financial decisions and is kind of an idiot. But everybody else, that's usually what happens. So comment down below, what do you think of all this stuff? Are any of you still kind of in denial and thinking that the knife market is as strong as ever and it's going to bounce back like in 2 days or whatever? Or are you kind of seeing what I'm saying here? I will link that original video down below as well in case anybody cares. All right, guys, take care. I want to hear from you. Appreciate you. Catch you later.